Okay, we are live. Thank you so much, Jen, for being willing to come on and show everybody what a reading looks like.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to give this a try. It's my first
Yeah,
time, so
I'm so excited. I love people that have never had readings before. It gets me all excited. um, so you're in Canada, right?
yes.
Okay, and I'm in the United States. So I just want everyone to kind of see that it doesn't matter where your location is, energy is everywhere, and your loved ones are going to come through and talk to you, regardless of the distance between myself and you. So, Jen, before we get started, I just kind of want to go over the ground rules of the way that readings work. And because you've never had a reading before, you're not going to have anything to compare it to. Some people have already had readings and then they like to compare different mediums and readers. And the thing is every medium is different. They read differently, they speak differently, they communicate differently. And so the way that I communicate is I am able to see spirit, loved ones that have lived here on earth and passed away. And then I'm also able to communicate with energy of people that are still living here on earth. And so a lot of people will come to me just for guidance because they want to know if are they taking the right steps in their life? Do they need to shift somewhere? They'll be like, desiring something to happen in their life and wondering, is that going to happen? And so sometimes I can read that energy and I can make them aware of that, which is awesome.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. So when I see spirit, every spirit communicates differently. It's kind of like different languages here on earth, right? We have so many different dialects, right? And spirit's the same way. So when I communicate with spirit, sometimes I will see the spirit, sometimes I will just hear them, sometimes I will sense them, sometimes I will just download their knowledge of what they're trying to say without even seeing them or sensing them. Sometimes I can even taste their vices. So, like if they were smokers, I could taste cigarette smoke,
Oh,
or the whiskey that they were sipping, or the rose perfume your grandma used to wear, right? So, just depending on the spirit and how they communicate with me, I can hear them in different ways. Does that make sense?
yes.
Perfect. And then in regards to energy, energy is constantly shifting and changing, as you are very aware of. And so when I read energy, I'm simply reading the energy that is right now in this present moment. So a lot of times people will come to me. Surprisingly, I get a lot of people wondering if their spouses are cheating on them or if their marriages are going to work out. And obviously, I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know the future, but what I can do is read the energy of the moment. And so let's say for instance you're head over heels in love with your boyfriend and you are decided you're going to marry this man, and I see that your energy believes that, right? And so that's the energy that I'm reading. Yes, I can see it, he's the one for you. And then tomorrow you find out that he's cheated on you and you break up with him and you never want to speak to him again, and now you're like, well, Tina, you said he was the one for me. Well, that was the energy I was reading and the energy shifted. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
Awesome. So when I say something, it's not the word of God, it's simply the energy of the moment. Um, Another thing is, I do my best to leave my ego at the door when I do these readings, but we all have our own personal life experiences. And a lot of times we will interpret what's going on in our lives based on our past life experiences. And the life experiences you have and your past loved ones have are different than mine. And so they'll show me something that to me might mean one thing, but to you might mean something completely different. And so I try to leave my ego at the door and not try to interpret the information that comes through. I just try to give you that information that comes through and allow you to interpret it based on your life experiences. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
Awesome. And then another thing is I like to ask for evidence. There are a lot of people out here today talking about, oh, I'm a medium, I'm a psychic. And some of them really are, but others, I like to call them like, I would say the Hollywood psychic, but here in the United States, there's a TV show called Hollywood Psychic, and I believe he's real psychic. So I don't want to taint his name, but a lot of them will go out there to show off, and they'll like throw generic things out there and wait for people to pick up and say, "Oh, that's me," and then the person will, verbal vomit, and they give them all the information they needed to make it seem as though they're really reading energy. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so what I try to do is ask your spirit or ask the energy factual information that I would have no clue about, but you would absolutely be able to validate to make sure I'm reading the correct information. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yeah.
Awesome. And last but not least, sometimes some spirits will come in and I'll have really quiet ones that are shy that don't want to come in, or they feel like you wouldn't accept them in. And so they kind of stand off to the sidelines. And so if at any point in the reading you're wanting to hear from somebody and they're not coming in, you just let me know and we will put a call out there to the universe and we will do our best to connect with them so that you can communicate with them. Okay?
Sounds good.
Any questions?
No, I'm excited.
Awesome. So I always meditate on your energy for about 30 minutes to an hour before we even connect, just so that I can kind of have an idea of what's going on in your life. Now, I do know we've spoken a few times prior to this, so I do know a little bit about your life. And I want to let you know that when I do my best not to read people that I know, because I don't want to let what I already know about you convolute the information coming in. So I just want to put that out there right now. Some things were coming in. I was like, well, I know that's real. I know that's real. um, so I did my best to not let that get involved. Another thing is, I know this is going out to the public. So if anything comes up that you are not comfortable with the public knowing, please just say, hey, Tina, I'm not comfortable with this topic. And we'll finish it so you can get your reading and everything you need, but I'll edit that information out. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect. I want to respect your boundaries. Okay. So as I was meditating on your energy, a grandmother figure came in immediately. And it appeared as though she was standing behind your father. Has your grandmother on your father's side passed away?
Yes, a very long time ago.
Okay. And did she have a relationship with you when you were younger?
Yeah, we lived literally like 200 yards apart. We lived on the farm with those grandparents.
Great. Thank you. I was going to ask you that because she showed me that you were not like in a house with her, but you guys were nearby.
Yes.
And so I appreciate that. And it was a farm, correct?
Yeah, we lived on the farm with my grandparents.
Okay. Now did this farm have animals on it?
Yes, cattle.
Okay. Thank you. Were there goats?
There was before me. My grandfather
Okay.
had a goat dairy and a cattle dairy, both.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Because she was showing me goats. So I wanted to make sure that that was correct, that I was seeing the correct information. She had a really beautiful, beautiful spirit. I loved her energy and the brightness of this amazing woman. It's almost as though she would accept anybody into her life, and very compassionate, very understanding, and yet very stern. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh, very much so.
She loved you very much. And you have a brother, correct?
Yes.
Is your brother younger than you?
A year older.
A year older. Okay. Because there was something that she was showing me, and it was very interesting because she was very upset about it. And she shows me your brother, and she shows me him up on a pedestal.
Yep.
And as though you're like in the shadows. Mm-hmm. And she was very upset. She says, Jen was never treated properly. She was never cared for. She was never loved. And I just wanted to give her the attention she deserved. But it was almost like the family told her not to, or be careful, don't overstep your bounds. And don't play favoritism. They were warning her not to play favoritism with you. And so she said, I just didn't understand it. She just needed to be loved. She just needed to be shown that she was valued, that she was accepted, and no one would do that. And when I tried to do that, I was spoken to harshly, or I was put down, or I was told I needed to stay within my place. Does that make sense to you?
It does, yeah.
Okay, so she just wanted to validate you right now. She said, I'm so sorry I couldn't validate you when I was there on earth, but you need to know how phenomenal you are. You are an amazing woman, and everything that you have today is because of you, not because of anything this family has given you. Everything is because of you. You've had a fight, you've had a scrap, you've had to earn your way to the top, and you are there. And I'm so incredibly proud of you. And I couldn't be more grateful for the woman that you have become, because you've done it all on your own.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, because I was only 4 or 5 when she passed, but I was super close. I was always over at their house. They had the horses, and I'm a big horse person. So I literally would go over there and do chores with my grandfather and help my grandma bake and spend all this time with her. I just loved our relationship back then.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but I was so young when she was taken, and I wish I'd got more time with her.
She wishes you had gotten more time with her too. Another thing she shows me is you walking across the stage with your cap and gown.
Oh, yeah.
And so she wants to acknowledge that she was there when you graduated high school. And she shows us just like this extreme sadness around your graduation. And she shows you like looking into the crowd and not seeing anybody, but she wants you to know that she was there and she witnessed it and she saw it.
It's funny you
Okay.
say that, because my grad was such a sad time because nobody really made an effort, like even my own parents at the time. And her husband, my grandfather, wasn't in my life at that point. Like my grandmother or my aunt had taken my grad pictures over to show him, and he's like, "Who's that?" Like he didn't
Oh,
even recognize,
wow.
he didn't even know. I hadn't seen him since I was like 10 years old. Him and my parents had a fight and falling out, and I hadn't seen him. And yeah, my aunt took pictures to show him, and he didn't even know who I was.
I'm so sorry. That's so sad.
I'm glad she was there, though. That feels good to
She
know she
was.
was there cheering me on.
She was so proud of you. And she also shows me you crossing the stage again.
Mm-hmm.
So have you graduated college?
I did college, and then in less than a year, I'll be graduating with my psychology degree as well.
That's awesome. So she wants you to know she sees this. She acknowledges it. She's proud of you.
Oh.
Are you the first person to graduate college from your family?
No, my brother was just ahead of me. He did trades, but I'm
Okay.
one of the first in that family to do anything with my life.
Got it. Because she's acknowledging that as well. So she's saying like you are a trailblazer is what the word she's using. You're a trailblazer. And so she's using that word and she's saying that you're phenomenal and she says, don't be upset that your family doesn't show up for you because they're jealous and envious of you and you are accomplishing things that they're not capable of. And so they show negativity towards you because of that jealousy. Does that make sense to you?
Totally makes sense.
Okay. So she just wants you to realize it's not you, it's them.
Okay. That makes
Okay.
that makes a lot of sense. Makes me feel better too.
Good. She says, so she's giving kind of like some words of wisdom. She says, we come into this world to learn certain lessons. And some of us learn the lessons really well. And some of us kind of have to get hit over the head with the pan in order to let the lessons sink in. And unfortunately, you come from a family of very stubborn-headed individuals and people that don't get the lesson until multiple different times. And sometimes they don't even get the lesson. Like sometimes they have to smack them over the head several times before they're like, oh, maybe this is what it means. And so she says, you just have a family full of really stubborn-headed people and their intellect isn't as bright as yours. And so they just can't comprehend in the way that you do. She says they're simple-minded people. I hope that's not insulting.
No, I totally understand. The stubborn, especially like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that says a lot about especially like that side of the family.
Yeah, and so she's just wanting to acknowledge it. It feels like she's having to really validate your feelings because of all of the invalidation you've received your entire life. And she feels like she has to be the one to validate it now that she has an opportunity to speak to you. So she's just trying to like give you all those seeds of wisdom that she wished she could have given you while she was here on earth. And then your grandfather, her husband, is he still here?
No, he passed about 10 years ago.
Okay, got it. Because there is a grandfather as well, but this man is standing behind your mom. So has your mom's father passed away as well?
Yeah, about a year before I was born, actually.
Okay, so he's standing behind your mom. And as I bring him in, your father's father pops up next to your grandmother. So he's there. He just came in. But I'm going to go to this grandfather first. He says your mom has had to deal with a lot of really hard things in her life. And because of that, in order for her to survive, she's become emotionally void. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
And so he's trying to make excuses for her and the type of mother that she was. He says, me and your grandmother were challenging parents and that we had our own demons and we came into this relationship with our own scars. And we probably should not have been parents, but with the times the way they were when we were on earth, That was what was expected of us. And so, did he have 3 kids?
Yep, 3 girls.
Okay, thank you, because he showed me we had 3 girls and we probably never should have had any of them, because we didn't know how to love properly. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, yeah.
And so he's saying we did the best that we could. Now that I'm on the other side, I see my errors and my ways, and I wish I could have done better. He says, they all survived. They all are functional. They're okay. And it looks like one aunt has done a lot of work to really get through the pain of the childhood, and to connect. Do you have a relationship with one of your mom's sisters, like a closer relationship?
I kind of did, but I haven't for a few years due to some big issues with her. And then my mom's oldest sister passed of a drug overdose about 10 years ago.
Okay, got it. So he's acknowledging that one of his daughters kind of was able to get out of the trauma. So that's what he's acknowledging. But he's saying a lot of it is because of them. So he's just kind of stepping forward and taking responsibility. And what he's saying is, we handed our trauma on to our girls and they handed their trauma on to you guys. And so he's giving you admiration for working through this trauma and working on finding your healing and setting your own path. He's saying you deserved more. And I wish that you had the love that you deserved, but because you didn't have it, you've become so much stronger. And you're a fighter because of it. And although it's easy for us to sit in our pain and wallow in the victimhood of the trauma we grew up in, he said, the strong ones always find their way out, and you are a strong one. And he thanks you for breaking the chains of abuse that was handed down from this side of the family. Does that make sense to you?
Totally makes sense.
Awesome. His wife, your mom's mom, she's passed away as well.
Yes.
And she's next to him. It feels like your grandfather was very verbally abusive, but it feels like your grandmother may have been very physically abusive. Not like a constant abuse, but like she would get very angry and then she would lash out through physical. Does that make sense to you?
No, I don't remember her. I know she was very verbally abusive. She was very controlling. And very much like I remember hearing as a child all the time about, fat girls aren't attractive. Nobody wants a fat girl. Like you have to watch your weight and things like that. And my grandfather was actually never around for my mom. He was in the military. And so he was gone most of the year throughout pretty much his entire life, was gone somewhere stationed. So yeah, I don't know much about much about my grandfather. I've heard lots of great things about him, but I don't know any of the bad stuff. And my grandmother was just very strict, like that very old fashioned, very strict. You do what I say. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And and her biggest thing was to be attractive as a woman, you had to be skinny, you had to be perfect, you had to follow her rules.
Got it. And none of that's true.
Oh yeah. Thankfully I worked through that shit, but yeah.
Right. I can tell you, I am plenty fluffy and my husband loves all of it.
Exactly.
Awesome. And so she's just kind of coming in, she's acknowledging you. It feels like you guys didn't have too close of a relationship.
We did, but it wasn't. Like we lived 2 provinces apart. We lived hours apart. I seen her multiple times a year for breaks, but that was it. And it was up and down. Sometimes it was really good. Sometimes it wasn't.
Yeah. It's like, she's saying it lacked an emotional connection. Is what she's saying.
Yes. That makes total sense. Yeah.
Okay, great. And so she's just kind of acknowledging that. And she's, again, just like your other grandmother, she's saying, I'm very proud of you. You need to know that I'm grateful for having you in my life. I'm grateful for, even as a child, you beat the, how's that saying? She's saying, you danced to the beat of your own drum. And you didn't allow anyone to steal your fire. Even though everybody around you tried to steal your fire, you never allowed your light to dim. You shone through it all. And that was something that I really admired about you, just the beauty that would always come from you. And no matter how hurt you were, you would shake it off and you would get back up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a true gift that you carry, and you carry it to this day. And I just want to let you know that I acknowledge that, and I see you and I love you.
Oh.
So she's giving that to you. And then I see a relationship with a niece. As I was looking at your energy, it's like you get together with a niece and like your entire light just brightens, and like you can't take the smile off your face with this specific niece. But it feels like you've got more than one niece, but there's one particular niece that just lights you up inside. Is that accurate?
I just got one niece, and yeah,
Okay.
we're extremely close.
Okay. Do you have more than, is it just one niece? Do you have other nephews, nieces as well?
I have a nephew as well, a
Okay,
niece and a
thank you.
nephew.
Okay, thank you. I'm seeing like two kids, but I'm seeing this one niece. This one niece is just so special to you. And so they're acknowledging that bond. And it's interesting because they're saying that's the bond you should have had when you grew up. And so they're thanking you for providing that bond to this niece because she needed it in this lifetime. She needed to be validated. She needed to be loved. She needed to be inspired. And you came in and you're giving her that inspiration. And so they're acknowledging that and they're thanking you for that. It looks as though she doesn't get it from home the way that she needs it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're saying you've kind of taken her under your wing. You've identified that, you see it. And you're like, you will not be raised the way I was raised. You will know that you're wanted. You will know that you're loved. You will know that you're needed. And so you've kind of made that your mission in this life to take this niece under your wing and raise her up. Is that accurate?
So true. Yeah.
Perfect. So they're acknowledging that. And they're saying, this is how you're breaking the chains within our family. This is how you're healing the trauma. And we thank you for putting in that work and that effort, because it's not easy to sacrifice your time for someone else's child. And yet you're doing it. And we thank you for that. So they're just acknowledging that.
Yay. Oh, that's great.
Another thing that they show me is, and I thought it was such a beautiful picture, is they show you like sitting in uneven water, like standing on the top of a life raft on uneven water. And then you're just like lifting your hand down and you're pulling people up onto the life raft with you. And it's not even like people, it's people that you see need help. And you're just like you're just surrounded by people and you're just pulling them up. And so what that tells me is you are phenomenal at identifying people who are drowning in their own misery or drowning in their own life circumstances. And you're phenomenal at pulling them up and giving them that hope. And you just have this beautiful healing light that surrounds you. And so they're acknowledging that as well. And they're showing me that that is your life purpose. That is why you're here on this earth. And so they want to validate that. And they also want to say that's why you went through so much, because you couldn't do the work that you do today if you hadn't gone through all of the trials and tribulations that you've gone through and overcome. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
Okay. They say you sit there sometimes and you go, why did I have to go through this shit? This is awful. Like I could have gone through like a little bit of it and gotten this far, but I shouldn't have gone through all of it. And they're saying, but you needed to go through all of it because of the life work, the purpose of this life that you're living today. You had to experience it and you had to get through it so that you could show others how to get through that path as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Because they're saying sometimes she questions why. And that's why she needs to know why.
I always figured that, but some days I'm like, really?
Yes. Another thing is that they were showing me, so it's interesting because they showed me you like with extreme sadness and then just kind of like sitting in darkness. And then they transitioned to your feet in the sand and a huge smile on your face. And so what that tells me is when you're going through depression, and it looks like there's times in your life where you do kind of like fall down into that depression. And it's kind of, it could be habit, like when certain triggers in your life, you kind of go back into that headspace that you were as an adolescent. And so when you go into that deep depression, what they're saying is get outside into the sun, like soak your feet into the earth. This is what climbs you out of that depression. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's like that natural medicine.
Yeah, I love being outdoors. It always makes me happy.
Okay, good. That's your special place. They're definitely confirming that. Like she needs to soak her feet down in the sand. She needs to be bringing in that grounding energy and just, it lights her up inside. So, and then one other person came in as I was meditating on your energy. It feels like an uncle energy. I couldn't determine though whose side of the family it was on. So it could have been like a family friend as well. He was a tall, slender gentleman. Um, and it was a very interesting energy he carries with him, because it's not like he's coming in. How do I put this? It feels like he may have done you wrong in some way in your childhood. He actually lit up some pictures of mine from a childhood. And so let me explain what that means. When I have experienced a life circumstance that's very similar to a life circumstance that you have experienced, it will trigger me. Even though it's your energy, it triggers that trauma within me. And that's called lighting up a picture, where it just like kind of sparks that memory and brings me back into that trauma space. And so this specific man triggered childhood memories in me, and it felt as though he may have done similar things to you, and in some way. And so when this man came in, I immediately got defensive, and I was like, "Hold up, we're not going there." And this does happen several times. It has happened several times with some of my clients that have been abused similarly, and then the abusers will come in to apologize. And so I have to kind of put up that boundary and say, you can't come in. You're not welcome here, because I don't allow any abusers or any predators to come in and revisit their victims. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And so this particular individual that came in, I'm not going to give him very much time, but I want to let you know that he came in to apologize. So he felt as though he did you wrong in some way when you were a child or an adolescent. And he's coming in to apologize, trying to make things right. And that's as much energy as I'm going to give this man. And you can take that information and do with it as you please.
Okay. I'm not even sure who this person would be. So
that's
it's
fine.
not even
that's
like
good.
coming up.
Okay, great. Awesome. I get a little bit protective when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I'm like, nope, we're not going there. But you also have the right to know that someone's apologizing for something that they've done. So we're going to leave that there. Now I'm going to kind of open the door to you to see if there's any other loved ones that are out there that you're wanting to connect with. Those are the ones that came in while I was meditating on your energy for a short time. Any questions you have?
Well, there's one father type figure that passed a few years ago that I always wondered how he was doing, because his life ended in such a bad way. And we were always so close, and I really have missed him a lot since he passed.
Okay, give me just 1 second. Let me ground myself, and then I'll have you tell me his full name 3 times. Okay, if you could please just tell me his full name 3 times.
Stephen Hill, Stephen Hill, Stephen Hill.
Thank you. Did this individual die of trauma?
Yes.
Okay. So I feel like something's hitting me very quickly. Was he shot or stabbed?
He was in a head-on collision with a semi.
Okay. Got it. That would explain something hitting me very quickly. It feels as something sharp is hitting me, which is why I say shot or stabbed, because did something go into him?
I don't know the specifics, but they think he had a heart attack, which then caused him to veer into an oncoming truck and trailer.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. I don't need to give you to give me any more. So it feels as though like maybe when he was hit, something went into him, like impaled him almost. But it feels like he went very quick. So it doesn't feel like he was suffering. It doesn't even feel, it literally just is like something sharp and then nothing. So it feels like he passed away almost instantly. And he says, I'm okay. So he wants you to know he's okay on the other side. He looks amazing. He looks very happy. And it looks like he's surrounded by loved ones. So other people within his family that loved him very much had passed prior to him passing, and they were there to accept him into heaven when he got there. This man, was he a farmer of some sort or worked with his hands? Because he shows me very rough hands.
He was a farmer and a mechanic.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because it's like sandpaper hands, and very worn skin, like a leathery worn skin. Mm-hmm. And so someone that's been out in the sun a lot loves using his hands. fills him up inside, makes him feel like he's responsible for something. Also, this man has a very kind heart, very compassionate, and he loved giving people advice even when they didn't want it. It's like he was, let me tell you something, have a seat. And he would just go on, and people are like, are you done yet? But he just loved to share his wisdom, and he wanted to leave this world better off than he found it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. He also wears a hat, and it's like a flat bill hat almost, to protect himself from the sun. Did he wear a hat like that?
Yeah, always had a cowboy hat on.
Okay, thank you. Because he's like, I'm like, oh, that's a very interesting hat. Okay, got it. Marked it down. So he's just a very beautiful soul. Was he like in his 50s when he passed?
Yeah, late 50s. Yeah, I would say about that.
Okay, perfect, because he's showing me that's about the age. So this is kind of how I ask for evidence to make sure that I'm picking up on the right information. You had a special place in his heart. He says, she's my daughter. So he claims you as his daughter. And he's like, someone had to be your father. So he's kind of like very sure of himself and very sarcastic, but a dry sarcasm.
Oh yes.
Like he doesn't care if he offends you. It's like, well, I said it. That's what I said. What I said. So
yeah, very much him.
Very great guy. Yeah, he says he's doing really good. He said he was struggling with illness while he was here on this earth. And he pushed through it. He didn't accept it. He didn't acknowledge it. He was like, well, when my time comes, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to enjoy every moment that I have. And that's the way he lived his life. I don't have time to worry.
Yeah.
And so he says he's on the other side now. He's perfectly healthy.
That's good. I'm glad.
Yes. And he says he's watching over you.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's really interesting because he like shows me him walking you down the aisle. And so he's acknowledging he's not going to be here when you get married. But he says, when you're walking down the aisle, know that you're on my arm. Okay.
I like that. Yeah.
He says sorry because he feels like that's where his place, that's where he belongs. When you're getting married, he goes, I should be walking you down the aisle and I won't be there, but you need to know that I am there spiritually.
Oh, that's good. Oh, yay. It makes me feel so good. I can connect with him again. Because the last few years before he passed, life was just so busy. I didn't get to see him as much as I wanted. So when all of a sudden we lost him so quickly, I was just so heartbroken that I felt like I'd lost all this time with him.
Yeah, he's still with you every day. He says, I never leave your side. He shows me like bright, like flashes of light, almost like you see a flashlight out of your corner of your eye and you're like, what was that? Like almost like light on the walls. And you're like, where's that coming from? And he says, that's him showing you that he's there. So interesting that he's showing like bright, almost like reflections from like coins and stuff. Like, you know how when things the sunlight shines on bright things and it like projects to the walls? Like that's what he's showing me. Like, and you'll see it like out the corner of your eye, like with something there, and that's him.
That's nice to know. I'm glad he's with me still.
Yeah. Any other questions you have for him while he's here?
No, I'm just happy that he's still there and that he went quick. I had a feeling he did just with the way the accident was, but I just wanted to know he was okay and to let him know I miss him.
Yeah. He says, I didn't feel a thing. So
good. Yeah. I'm glad because I always worried about that.
Yeah. Is there anyone else you want to connect with?
No, not that I can think of.
Awesome. Any questions that you might need answered before we finish?
No, I think I've got lots today. Nothing that I can really think of that's popping into my mind.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. And this will probably air within the next week or two, so you can go back and reflect. And because it's always good to rewatch, because when we're in the moment, it goes past us so fast, right? And we don't even realize everything that was said. So I always like to go back and rewatch my readings and listen and go, oh yeah, that happened. That did happen. And just kind of reflect. And it gives us even further healing.
Yeah, that's lovely. Great idea.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thanks.